Okay, have a good session.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone. So welcome to the updatable encryption sessions of AsiaCrypt. So I'm Jiaxin Pan. I'm your chair. I'm chair this session together with Rongmao Chen. So in this session, we have 4 talks. So I just want to remind all the speakers that each of you will have 5 minutes. It's a short version. And in between the talk, I might take 1 or 2 questions. And we also have a Q&A session at the very end. Okay, so let's start with the first talk. The title is The Direction of Updatable Encryption Does Not Matter Much. It is a work from Yao Jiang. So now, Yao, are you ready? If you're ready, you can share your screen and start. Yeah.
Thank you, Jiaxin. Thank you for the introduction. This talk is about analyzing security notions based on uni and bidirectional updates. We introduced 6 variants of security notions for UE schemes. We prove that security notions with uni and bidirectional updates are equivalent. We also demonstrate that security notions with no directional key updates are strictly stronger. Our second major contribution is designing a post-quantum secure UE scheme. In this talk, I will focus on explaining the relations among security notions for with bi and unidirectional updates. Please refer to our paper for more details or other results. Updatable encryption provides a solution that allows a cloud to update ciphertext from an old key to a new key with the help of a user-provided update token. It is reasonable to expect that fresh encryptions, updated ciphertext, and tokens shouldn't reveal anything about plaintext to an adversary. The main benefit of using an updatable encryption scheme is that it offers an efficient way for key rotation. However, this property is a double-edged sword. The update token can potentially be used to derive ciphertext and keys in adjacent epochs and leak additional information. The adversary can use these pieces of leaked information to trivially win a security game. Security notions defined in prior works were designed for bidirectional updates. We now define 6 variants of security notions. These 6 variants are a combination of 3 versions of key updates and 2 versions of ciphertext updates. Security notions for UE schemes with unidirectional updates are included in this case. The game for these 6 variants are the same. The adversary and the challenger behave the same. The only change compared to prior notions is how the challenger evaluates the trivial win conditions. A trivial win is depending on the update settings. For example, in bidirectional update settings, the adversary gains more information, and it seems more likely for the adversary to trigger the trivial win condition. But we show that this is not the case. Now we present relations among 4 versions of the same security notions for UE schemes. We prove that confidentiality notions with uni and bidirectional updates are equivalent, similar for integrity notions. To prove security notions with uni and bidirectional updates are equivalent, it is equivalent to prove that any trivial win condition triggered in the bidirectional update setting is triggered in the unidirectional update settings as well. Let's look at a motivation example. which helps us understanding this relationship and present proof idea. Consider a confidentiality game. Information in the red and the pink boxes are revealed to the adversary, no matter uni or bidirectional updates. Information in the orange boxes are revealed to the adversary only in bidirectional updates. Notice that in both uni and bidirectional update settings, the adversary can trivially win the confidentiality game if it asks for one of C1 to C6, and the adversary will not trivially win the confidentiality game if it asks for none of C1 to C6. For example, if the adversary asks for C1, it can infer C2 by the knowledge of token 2. If it knows C2, then it can use K2 to decrypt C2 and knows the underlying plaintext to trivially win a confidentiality game. Hence, the adversary can trivially win a confidentiality game if it asks for C1 or C2. This example implies that in a confidentiality game, the adversary either triggers the trigger win condition in both uni and bidirectional update settings, or never triggers the trigger win conditions of either setting. This means that UE schemes with unidirectional updates don't provide more security than UE schemes with bidirectional update. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. Let's see if there's any questions. Yeah, it doesn't seem so. So thank you once again, and let's move to the next talk. So the next talk is improving speed and security in updatable encryption schemes. It is a joint work from Dambonet, Saba Eskandarian, Sam Kim, and Marais Shi. I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. So Saba will give the presentation. Yeah, so you can go. Yeah.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I was muted. All right, thank you everyone for coming. So this is joint work with my advisor Dan Bonnet and Sam Kim and Maurice Shi. And the problem that we're interested in this work, and I guess in all the works in this session, is that of key rotation. So this is where you have some data and you've encrypted it under a key that you hold, and you've outsourced the storage of this data to some third-party cloud provider. Now there might come a time when you want to change the key under which the data is encrypted. And you might want to do this because the key has been compromised, or you want to just change it regularly to prevent the key from becoming compromised. Or perhaps you're trying to be compliant with one of a number of legal or best practices requirements. In particular, in the payment card industry, this is something that is required. There are some naive ways that you could do this. You could send your keys to the cloud and have them change the encryption on your behalf. Or you could download all of the encrypted data and decrypt it and re-encrypt it locally and send it back. But these would be very costly, or they might be insecure. So there's been a lot of work in what's called updatable encryption, where the goal is to minimize the communication between the client and the server, so that the client just sends the server a small update token, and then the server is able to update the ciphertext without learning the key or the data. And there's been a long line of work on this, and there's, I guess, all the works in this session also deal with this problem. So our contributions in this setting are first improvements over prior security definitions. In particular, we identify an additional security requirement that in this setting was not previously used. So in prior works, usually the security definitions would not require hiding the age of the ciphertext. What I mean by this is that they would hide the content of the ciphertext, but they would reveal whether a ciphertext was a fresh encryption, or if it was a re-encryption, or if it was something that had been re-encrypted twice or 3 times. All of these could be distinguished, or at least the definitions allowed it. So we modify definitions that this information is also hidden. And there are some additional changes like in integrity as well, but I think that's the most important change. We additionally have 2 new constructions of updatable encryption. One is from nested AES. It's very, very fast, but comes with the caveat that it only supports a bounded number of updates that need to be known at ciphertext encryption time. There's a second one from key homomorphic PRFs, really from almost key homomorphic PRFs, based on ring learning with errors. And this one is about 500 times faster than prior work, although it's still a little bit slower than the nested AES construction. I should point out that all of our constructions are in the ciphertext dependent model, which is where before the client sends the update token to the server first sends a small message to the client. So there's one round of interaction. So I'll just give kind of a high-level overview of our two schemes. So the updatable encryption from nested AES is a very, very fast and simple scheme, and it only requires an authenticated encryption and a PRG to work. It unfortunately, and I mean the throughput of the system is about as fast as your computer is able to compute AES. There's a couple of caveats though. One is that it only works for a bounded number of re-encryptions decided at encryption time. So when you first encrypt a message, you need to know how many times it's going to be re-encrypted over the course of that data's lifetime. This isn't really a problem if you're doing this for compliance reasons, where you know, hey, we're going to re-encrypt once a year, and we're going to have this data around for say 20 years. But there are other settings where say you don't know how often you're going to be changing the re-encryption, and in this settings, this might be an issue. Another caveat is that the decryption time is going to be linear in the number of re-encryptions. And this is because, as I mentioned, it's a nested scheme. So when you decrypt, you need to remove all the layers of nesting. And you can see the details of how this scheme works in our paper. The second scheme is updatable encryption from key homomorphic PRFs, really from almost key homomorphic PRFs, which is like a key homomorphic PRF, but there's some noise. So this scheme removes the shortcomings of the previous scheme. It supports as many re-encryptions as you want, and the decryption time does not depend on the number of re-encryptions. And the scheme is actually still quite fast, but it's still, of course, slower than the nested scheme, which only relies on AES. But this scheme comes with a new caveat of a somewhat weaker integrity guarantee and a somewhat weaker age hiding guarantee. And you can see the details of all this in the paper. The main tool that we use in this second scheme is a new almost key homomorphic PRF from ring LWE in the random oracle model. So since the focus of our work is on building a performant scheme that can be used in real life, I want to show you the preview of our evaluation. So when we run the scheme with the almost key homomorphic PRF construction, we're about 500 times faster than Recrypt, which is a prior work by Everspa et al. In 2017. And when we run the scheme with the nested AES, this is another 30 times faster than our almost key homomorphic PRF construction. And this is for encryption and re-encryption. When you look at decryption, there's a trade-off because the nested scheme takes longer the more layers of encryption you've used. And we saw that for up to 50 re-encryptions, the nested scheme is faster, after which you're better off using the key homomorphic PRF. One thing I want to point out is that although our schemes are orders of magnitude faster than the Recrypt construction by Everspa et al., their ciphertexts in the prior work are smaller. So in our work, if you're using the nested AES scheme and you're doing a small number of re-encryptions, say maybe one a year for 20 years, the ciphertext size is comparable to Recrypt. But if you want to do more re-encryptions, or if you want to use the key homomorphic PRF, then the ciphertext expansion is going to grow more significantly. So that's all I want to say about this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now or contact me later at saba@cs.stanford.edu. The paper and source code are online. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. Let's see if there's some question from the chats. I don't think so. So yeah, so thank you again. So yeah, I will pass the stage to Roma to moderate the last two one.
Okay, hello everyone. So now we come to the third talk, and the third talk is about CCA updatable encryption against malicious re-encryption attacks. And the authors are Longchen, Yalan Li, and Qian Tang. So, and the speaker is Yalan Li. So Yalan, please.
Okay. Thanks, Roma, for doing introduction. Can you see my slides?
Yes, please.
Okay. Welcome to this talk. It's about CCA updatable encryption against the malicious re-encryption attacks. I'm Yalan Li. This is joint work with Longchen and Qian Tang. You know that the first two speakers have introduced the background and the basic notion of updatable encryption. so short for UE. So I won't go details about that. In short, we have learned that updatable encryption is really needed for secure outsourced storage. And its general paradigm is like this. Please note that in our paper, we focus on the more general case ciphertext-dependent updatable encryption, where the token generation is related to the ciphertext. Since UE was proposed, formalizing its security models have been important but challenging. On the one hand, similar to authenticated encryption, short for AE, both the confidentiality and the integrity are also UE's desired security goals. On the other hand, different from AE, UE's adversary has more capability. He can corrupt the key, the token, the ciphertext, and their update for different epochs. Accordingly, the situation that UE's adversary can truly win becomes more complicated. So naturally, in our paper, we consider two questions about UE's security models. The first question is, we know that in AE, there is a relationship CPA indistinguishability plus ciphertext integrity can imply the CCA indistinguishability. So we are curious about how's the relationship in UE. The second question is whether the existing UE security models are strong enough to capture all possible real attacks. Our first contribution answers the first question. Surprisingly, this relationship does not hold in UE. How could this be? Actually, it's because of adversary's capability gap. To support this, we also design a counterexample, which is CPA and CTXT secure, but CCA insecure. We also noticed that, interestingly, there is a separate work to show that for special UE, ciphertext independent UE, this relationship holds. Anyway, we have to say, for general UE, the CPA security plus ciphertext integrity are not enough. The CCA security is still needed. As for second question, unfortunately, the answer is still no. As we found, the existing security models cannot capture a real attack called malicious re-encryption attacks. So we refine strengthened UE security models to resist such attack, and also define CCA-style security models for UE. Let's show more details about malicious re-encryption attacks. It describes attackers' behaviors like in the UE system, attackers intrude the cloud server and obtain the read and write privilege. Then he can inject a malformed ciphertext. After a time period, all the ciphertexts get updated to new versions. Then the attackers intrude the server again and to read the update of such malformed ciphertext. We see such attack can really happen, as it's possible for some hackers or compromised system manager to corrupt the server and get read and write access to launch such attack. Actually, this attack can threaten both the confidentiality and integrity, and we also found that for some existing UE schemes like KSS Recrypt, their confidentiality and integrity are vulnerable to this attack. Our third contribution is proposing a new construction called Recrypt Plus, which is secure in the new strengthened security models. Building from Recrypt scheme, Recrypt Plus enhances it to resist the malicious re-encryption attack. How to resist this attack? Our idea is making the ciphertext checkable so that only valid ciphertext can be updated. To achieve this, the high-level ideas contains two steps. First, make the ciphertext checkable. It includes binding the two portions of the ciphertext, and the server only needs to check this binding shape between two portions of the ciphertext, And then the client can check one portion, the header is valid, where it's secret key. Secondly, we should keep the checkable ciphertext still updatable. Here it requires some building blocks have the homomorphic property, and even their homomorphism should be compatible. If you are interested, please refer to our paper for the details. That's all, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. It seems we have no questions so far. Yeah, so I have a questions for Yalang.
Sure.
Yeah, so I note that you the building block in your construction is a homomorphic hash, right? It's I know from your full version in the ePrint, so it's a homomorphic hash from a group. So can you mention a little bit about some other possible applications of such a interesting building block?
Since as the input of the homomorphic hash is the output of some key homomorphic PRF, so we need to keep the two homomorphism compatible. That is, the domain of this homomorphic hash should be the range of key homomorphic PRF. So it needs some technique to achieve this homomorphic hash.
Okay, thanks, Yalang. So, okay, you are still welcome to put your questions on the Julep chat, and we will ask the speaker to give some answers at the end of this session. So now let's move on to the first talk. Our first talk is the last talk of this session, and the talk is about determining the code primitive for
Excuse me, but I think there was a question in the Zoom chat.
Oh, yeah. So maybe we can keep it to the end of the session.
We can do that at the end of this session. I'm sorry for ignoring that. And so, yeah, let's finish my introduction. And the last talk is from Faith Barley, Paul Rochler, and Serge Vandeny, and the speaker is Paul. So please, okay.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction. So what we are looking at in our talk is ratcheting. I will introduce that in a couple of seconds. And we specifically look at optimally secure ratcheting. And what we found out in our work is that there is a smaller core primitive behind optimally secure ratcheting that I will introduce in this talk. So let's start with ratcheting. The idea of ratcheting is that usually in instant messaging, we have very long sessions, very long communications. And during these communications, it can happen that Alice and Bob, when they communicate, lose their state to an adversary. So an adversary can obtain secrets from the devices of Alice or Bob. And what we still want, since these communication sessions are very long-term, is that the conversation still keeps a little bit of secrecy. For example, if very early in the conversation Alice is compromised and very late in the conversation Bob is compromised, we still want that the middle part of the conversation is still protected. And the idea of providing this secrecy is that we introduce or we use some form of a ratchet mechanism. This is where this term comes from. And what this ratchet mechanism does is that it invalidates old secrets and removes these secrets from the state such that later exposures of the state do not leak too much information. And also Alice and Bob regularly sample and include new secrets to their key pools such that future states are not foreseeable from older exposures. The origin of this is the signal messenger, and there have been multiple constructions proposed since then. The basic idea behind all of them is that they regularly redo key exchanges, and with these key exchanges, they introduce new key material and allow for the removal of old key material. The basic syntax for this notion is that we have a send algorithm, a receive algorithm, and specifically an abstract initialization algorithm. This algorithm gives Alice and Bob a state with which they afterwards can establish key material, so symmetric keys. So we ignore the channel part in our consideration. And what we also, just for simplicity, ignore here is bidirectional conversations. So we just consider conversations where Alice can communicate to Bob. Okay, and if there is an algorithm yellow here, or this means that this algorithm is deterministic. As I mentioned, there have been constructions before, specifically one work from Crypto by myself and a co-author, Bertram Poettering, where we aim for optimal security. This means that we require security of these keys, that they are indistinguishable from random keys whenever this is possible. So if an adversary can expose the states, then we require security whenever a construction can provide the secrecy. The interesting observation is that under certain conditions, we can instantiate this security notion with standard public key cryptography. But specifically in the bidirectional conversation or communication setting, we need heavier tools. And by heavier tools, I mean that we need some kind of key updatable key encapsulation mechanism. This is like public key encryption, so key encapsulation mechanisms where Alice can encapsulate symmetric keys to Bob, so to the public key of Bob, and Bob can decapsulate them with his secret key. And in addition to this normal key encapsulation mechanism, this key update means that the public key and the secret key can independently be updated, and also with some form of forward secrecy, meaning that from a newer secret key, we cannot recover previous secret keys by recovering information from before the update. The problem of this notion is that it relies on, or so far it relies on hierarchical identity-based encryption, and this is pretty inefficient. So the question is this building block key updatable public key encryption or key updatable KEM, is this really necessary to instantiate bidirectional or general ratcheting security notions? And the interesting answer, which we found out during our work, is that we indeed need this construction of key updatable public key encryption to instantiate ratcheting, specifically under optimal security when state exposures and randomness manipulation are considered realistic. And we think randomness manipulation is realistic, specifically as it models little entropy or biased randomness sources. Interestingly, not only for the bidirectional, but already for the unidirectional conversation. So for the restricted conversation notion, this necessity can already been proven. And we prove this by generically building key updatable public key encryption from unidirectional ratcheting and vice versa. And this gives us confidence that these two notions are more or less equivalent. I will give you some short ideas of how we do this. Building ratcheting from key updatable public key encryption is rather simple. What we simply do is we encapsulate a symmetric key on sending and decapsulate it on receiving, and then afterwards we update the respective key part on each side after encapsulating and decapsulating, and this gives us the unidirectional ratcheting construction. The counter direction is a little bit more complicated. So first of all, encapsulating a key and decapsulating on the other side works pretty simple if we consider that the state of Alice in ratcheting is the public key in the key updatable public key construction. But updating the state on Alice's side and specifically also on Bob's side is a little bit more complicated because we do not allow for conversations between Alice and Bob. And in order to still achieve this is the simple thing, what we do is that we de-randomize sending during the update of the public key, and then the secret key holder simply also reduce the same send invocation by also invoking the send algorithm deterministically and then updating the secret key part, so this state part of Bob in the ratcheting notion, by taking the simulated ciphertext. Okay, there are many more details in our constructions, but this is just an overview. The interesting takeaway from our work is that by reducing the complexity from the ratcheting idea to this simpler key updatable key encapsulation mechanism idea, is that we have a core primitive of ratcheting now. We do not have to handle or trying to instantiate the stronger or more complicated interactive ratcheting notions, and can focus on finding better instantiations of this key updatable KEM that are, as I mentioned, simpler and less heavy than generically deriving it from hierarchical identity-based encryption. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. The full details are on ePrint, and you can contact me via email or Twitter. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So that's the end of this session of our talks. And now we come to the Q&A stage. So yes, so we have several questions on the Julep chat and also on the chat. So the first question is from Kevin. And the question is for the first two speakers. Yes. What are the biggest open problems in this area of updatable encryptions? And there seems to be some parameters that Kevin didn't hear discussed, like bandwidth and number of runs, and also security properties. So this question is for the first two speakers. Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
In the ciphertext independent updatable encryption setting, there is a paper called Fast and Secure Updatable Encryption, which was published in Crypto 2020, which analyzed the relations among security notions.
I think also so we didn't talk about round complexity, but I think in Yao's setting of the ciphertext independent papers, there's just one message from the client to the server. In the setting that I spoke about and Yanan spoke about, it's one round interaction. So the server sends one message to the client and the client sends one message back. In all of these settings, the amount of communication is constant size. And in practice, in the schemes, it's really like, maybe 100 some bytes. It's not a huge amount of bandwidth. In terms of the largest open problem in the ciphertext dependent setting, at least, I've actually, when I give talks about our work, I talk about how the largest open problem is this integrity problem, which Yanan's work has actually solved. But that's the problem that until 20 minutes ago, if you asked me what's the biggest open problem, I would have said it's that.
Okay. So yeah, thanks, Saba. Yeah, so now we still have 7 minutes.
So I think there's a question from Suji. So you can see it in the charts in the Zoom. So his question is that, because I think it's to all the speaker who talks about updatable encryptions. So it seems like each of you have a different model or have a new model or security notion for updatable encryption. So the question is that what's the relation between them, or if I want to construct updatable encryptions, which model I just choose? It's sort of I also want to ask a similar question. So maybe the authors for the updatable encryption can.
Yeah, I also think that Longchen has provided some answers. Right? Yeah, Long has some sort of answers. Yeah. So.
Yeah, according to I believe, I think we provide different models according to different scenarios. They have different settings like CIUE and CDUE, was talking by previous speakers. And we have some CCA security, CPA security, and the plain text integrity or self-text integrity. I think we should define different definitions like TKE. They have different security key for different application scenarios. And to answer this question in short, I guess we should choosing different security notions according to application scenarios.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So yeah. I actually have a question for Paul. So I'm just curious, like, because you mentioned that in Signal and these apps, they also have the ratcheting things. Like, actually, what do they use? Like, do they also use a HIPE, or they use, or they?
No, they achieve a significantly weaker security notion, and due to weakening, or actually, this was the first protocol, and they simply published a construction without providing a notion of security. And this notion or this construction simply relies on Diffie-Hellman assumptions and a key derivation function. So they simply really just do Diffie-Hellman key exchange in both directions over and over again, and mix these keys internally. This is everything that suffices. But for example, it doesn't achieve the strong notion of security under weak randomness. And for our proof, proving that these that key updatable public key encryption and ratcheting are equivalent, we need the adversary or the reduction to be able to obtain or actually manipulate the randomness in both directions. So for these constructions can be built with significantly weaker assumptions.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I also want to have one more question. So actually, for your work or for the work users have this stronger notion. So is there any like implementation or to compare to Signal, for example? Like
we have a construction, but we have a construction. Since I'm not someone who can implement this stuff very securely, I wouldn't propose it to be used. But and also we didn't scientifically measure the efficiency and compare it yet. But there is a prototype construction of a very similar construction. So I mentioned in my talk our paper from Crypto 2018. And there we have also the bidirectional construction, and this could actually be used. But since it uses HIPE, the ciphertexts increase in size, or the secret key, or whatever. So there is no construction yet that relies on something with constant size something. But it is important to mention that these updates only happen as long as the counterpart does not reply. So as soon as there is a reply from the counter side, then we can start with a fresh key updatable public key encryption public key. And so the size of the ciphertext, or the growing of ciphertext or secret key or whatever we choose, is bounded to the time frame in which only one party sends to the other.
Okay, thanks. Probably I should read your paper afterwards. So thank you. Yeah. So
welcome.
Yeah, I would say let's check if there's any question. Otherwise, we can conclude these sessions, I think.